Hey guys, welcome to Master and Learn It. In this video, we're going to be learning about an atom. So by definition, an atom is the smallest part of an element. What is an element? We know from the periodic table we have carbon, we have hydrogen, we have all other elements that we know on the periodic table. So an atom is the smallest part of an element. So what is an element? An element is made up of the same type of atoms. For example, let's talk about the oxygen element. If we take up the small oxygen atoms put together, they make what is called an oxygen element. If we take magnesium, small particles of magnesium or small atoms of magnesium, if we combine them together in their billions and trillions, they make up what is called an element of magnesium. Just like the wall, if you build a house just like any other wall, for you to build a wall you need the bricks. So an element also needs some bricks. So those bricks or the building blocks of an element is what we call an atom. So in its simple definition, an atom is the smallest part or is the smallest building block of an element. And we know that an element is made up of the same types of atoms. That means the atoms that make up the oxygen element are not the same atoms that make up the magnesium element. Right, so we want to know the structure of an atom. Even though they are very small, but we can visualize and try to see how they look. So every atom, be it the atom of magnesium, for oxygen, for hydrogen, any other you can think of, has 3 subatomic particles. So the 3 subatomic particles are the ones that you can see here on the board. So every atom has electrons, every atom has protons as well as neutrons. So we're going to define these 3 subatomic particles one after the other. Let's start by defining what are protons. Protons are found at the center of the atom. So protons are positively charged, so they have a charge of a positive, so they are positively charged. And at the nucleus or at the center, we also have what are called neutrons. So the neutrons do not have any charge, so that means the protons are positively charged and the neutrons do not have any charge. These two guys are found at the center, or they make up the center of every atom. So together we call them the nucleons because they come from the nucleus, isn't it? That means if you come from South Africa, we call you South African. If you come from Canada, we call you a Canadian, isn't it? So these two guys, they come from the nucleus, so we call them the nucleons. So the protons and the neutrons together, we call them the nucleons. That means the nucleon number, if we say what is the nucleon number, we just mean the number of protons as well as the neutrons. Right, so let's talk about the proton on its own. We said protons are positively charged. That's what the first thing we should know. They are positively charged. The second thing we should know about protons is the protons are found at the center or at the nucleus of every atom. And we should know that the number of protons, this is very important. The number of protons is called the atomic number. So this is very, very important. The number of protons is called the atomic number. And we should also know that on the periodic table, all the elements that we see on the periodic table are arranged according to the proton number. That means the first element on the periodic table, being hydrogen, has 1 proton, so it's on position number 1. The second element, being helium, has 2 protons. The third one, being lithium, has 3 protons. So we can see that all the elements that are arranged on the periodic table, they are arranged according to the proton number that we call the atomic number. So this is a very, very important principle we should also understand. And we should also know that the protons, they make up or they determine the physical nature of an atom. So all the physical nature of an atom is determined by the protons. So that's a very important part we should understand. Then the second part we should know, we want to talk about the neutrons. Like we've said already, the neutrons, they make up the center of the atom. So they are found at the center. We call them the neutrons. The second thing is they do not have any charge. So they have a zero charge. They don't have any charge. The neutrons do not have any charge. And the neutrons, together with the protons, they make up what is called the nucleon number, which we also call the mass number. So what we should understand at this point is the heaviest part of an atom is determined by the number of protons and the number of nucleons, isn't it? Looking at this chart can just give us a glimpse of what we're going to be explaining in a few seconds that come. But before we go there, let's talk about the electrons. The electrons, they are the third part that forms the subatomic part of an atom. So where are electrons found? The electrons are not found at the center of the atom, but they are found in spaces around the nucleons. They are moving around where there are the nucleons. Remember, the nucleons, we say those guys who stays at the center, at the nucleus, being the protons and the neutrons. So the electrons, they move in spaces around the protons and the neutrons. And the electrons have a negative charge. That's what we should know. So the electrons are negatively charged, unlike the protons that are positively charged. And we should also know that the electrons, they determine the chemical properties of an element. So all the chemical properties we're going to learn in the other videos that come, they are determined by the electrons. There is a very important principle we should understand at this very point, that an atom is neutral. An atom does not have an overall charge. How is that possible? Let us look at the structure of our atom. In this case, we're learning about the beryllium rather. If we can count the number of electrons that are on the helium, we could see that on the beryllium rather, we could see that the beryllium has, let's count the number of protons that we have here. So the protons, they are found at the center and they are 1, 2, 3, 4. That means we should also have 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons. So this is a very important principle we should be aware of. That means the number of protons is also equal to the number of electrons. So that means they cancel out. That means in an atom, if it has 2, or in this case beryllium has 4 protons, that means it also has 4 electrons which are negatively charged. So if we add positive 4 and negative 4, that comes down to 0. So we say an atom is neutral. The overall charge of an atom is neutral because the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. We can look at these subatomic particles that we are learning just here. So we can see that the protons, we remember they are positively charged and they have a charge of 1.6 times 10 to the power of negative 19 coulomb, and their mass is 1.67 times 10 to the power of negative 27, expressed in kgs. So we can see that the mass of protons and neutrons is exactly the same, and that's the only heaviest part of an atom. The electrons are really small. They weigh anything. So in most cases we take their mass as 0. So this is the basic, or the first basic we should just understand about an atom. That means an atom is made up of 3 subatomic particles: the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons. The protons and the neutrons, they are found at the center. The protons are positively charged. The neutrons do not have any charge. As the electrons, they are found in spaces around the protons and the neutrons, and they are negatively charged. And we also said an atom is neutral. That means the number of protons is equal to the number of electrons. We can use this notation to represent any element on the periodic table. So always know that the letter Z represents the atomic number. And we now know that the atomic number means the number of protons. And the letter A represents the guys that stay at the center, which are the nucleons, or they make up the mass of the atom. So the A represent the nucleons. What are the nucleons? The protons plus the neutrons. Put together, they make what we call the nucleon number or the mass number. And X just represent any element you're talking about. That means in a case, for example, we say, can you represent beryllium? In the same standard notation, it would be beryllium having how many protons does it have? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're gonna have a 4 on top right there, and the protons and the neutrons right inside there, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they will be 9. So that means we know that this is the atomic number or the proton number, and we know that this is denoted by the letter Z, and we have this 9 that represent the nucleon number, which is also denoted by the letter A. So we can do the last equation that we have here. Given that we know the number, the nucleon number, which means protons plus neutrons, and we know the atomic number, which means the number of protons, we can be able to calculate the guys that are neutral, which are the neutrons. So given that I have the A being the nucleon number or the mass number is 9, and I'm given that the atomic number or the number of protons is 4, so 9 minus 4, I'm left with 5. So this would be the number of neutrons. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about the isotopes and many other things that are coming. So keep watching the next video.